The Deep Space Explorer vessel Pioneer glided silently through the outer reaches of known space, its reinforced hull gleaming under the distant starlight. On the bridge, Captain Eva Rostova stood with her hands clasped behind her back, gazing at the swirling violet and turquoise clouds of the unexplored Serpent's Eye Nebula that dominated the viewscreen. Status report. Eva commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years in Deep Space Command. First Officer Ramirez looked up from his console. All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining position at the nebula's outer boundary, as ordered. The Cthar diplomatic vessel is approaching on schedule. Eva nodded, the tightness in her jaw betraying her wariness. The Cthar were not known for impromptu diplomatic meetings, especially not at the edge of uncharted space. Their message had been characteristically precise and devoid of emotional context, a request for a cultural exchange meeting to strengthen interspecies relations. Coming from a species that viewed humans as chaotic, emotional creatures unworthy of true alliance, the invitation seemed suspect at best. Opinions? Eva asked, glancing at her senior staff. Chief Engineer Jian Li shook his head. The Cthar don't do social calls, Captain. They want something. Or they're testing us, added Dr. Aristhorn, the ship's chief medical officer and xenobiologist. Tall and slender, with calculating eyes that had studied more alien physiologies than most would encounter in a lifetime, he leaned against the bridge railing. Every interaction with humans is a data point for them to analyze our emotional inefficiencies, as they call it. Eva's lips thinned into a line. The Terran Alliance had maintained a cold peace with the Cthar Empire for nearly 40 years, but relations remained fundamentally strained. The Cthar, tall and elegant humanoids with alabaster skin and piercing silver eyes, worshipped pure logic and had deliberately engineered emotional responses out of their society generations ago. They viewed human expansion across the galaxy as chaotic and unpredictable, a potential threat to their orderly existence. Whatever they want, we'll maintain diplomatic protocol, Eva decided. But stay alert. The Cthar never do anything without multiple layers of purpose. The communications officer's console lit up. Captain, the Cthar vessel is requesting docking clearance. Granted, Eva ordered. Senior staff with me to the reception bay. Let's see what this is really about. The Cthar delegation emerged from their sleek, geometric shuttle with practiced precision. 5 tall figures moved in perfect unison, their movements economical and deliberate. Their leader, whom Eva recognized as Ambassador Telsic from previous diplomatic records, stepped forward. His face was a study in controlled neutrality. Captain Rostova, the ambassador intoned, his voice melodious yet devoid of inflection. The Cthar High Council extends appreciation for accommodating this unscheduled cultural exchange. Eva inclined her head. The Terran Alliance values all opportunities for improved relations, Ambassador Telsic. Indeed, something flickered behind the ambassador's silver eyes, the closest thing to amusement a Cthar might display. We have observed your pioneering mission with interest. The High Council believes this presents a unique opportunity for deeper cultural understanding. Eva maintained her diplomatic smile, even as warning bells rang in her mind. We're happy to share our scientific findings. We bring a gift, Telsic interrupted, gesturing elegantly to one of his companions. A cultural observer to join your expedition through the Serpent's Eye Nebula. The Cthar delegate stepped forward, and Eva realized it was a female of their species, something rare in their diplomatic corps. She was tall like all Cthar, with the same alabaster skin and silver-white hair, but there was something subtly different about her eyes. Where most Cthar had gazes that seemed to dissect everything they observed, this one's silver eyes held a barely perceptible spark. Curiosity, perhaps. This is Lyra, Ambassador Telsic announced, a junior cultural observation specialist. She has been granted the honor of accompanying you as you explore the nebula to document human exploratory methods and facilitate greater understanding between our peoples. Eva kept her expression carefully neutral as she processed the thinly veiled insult. The Cthar were gifting them a glorified babysitter, a symbolic bride, as the old diplomatic joke went. It was an ancient custom from Earth's history that the Cathar had found fascinating in their studies of humanity, the exchange of brides to cement alliances. They weren't actually offering marriage, of course, but the symbolism was unmistakable and intentionally awkward. Here is our observer, our symbolic bride, to your primitive emotional needs for companionship. Now, let us watch you react. First Officer Ramirez, tense beside her, but Eva gave him a subtle gesture to stand down. She recognized this for what it was, a psychological game, meant to provoke an emotional response they could later analyze and mock in their reports. How thoughtful, Eva replied smoothly, meeting Telsic's gaze without blinking. The Terran Alliance is deeply appreciative of this gesture of goodwill. We accept your gift with gratitude and will ensure Specialist Lyra has suitable accommodations aboard the Pioneer. For a fraction of a second, Telsic's perfect composure faltered, clearly surprised by Eva's calm acceptance. He had expected embarrassment, awkwardness, or, at minimum, visible discomfort. Specialist Lyra has been thoroughly briefed on human customs and has undergone necessary physiological adjustments to tolerate your ship's environmental conditions, he continued. She will require minimal supervision and will not interfere with your operations. Eva smiled professionally. We welcome cultural exchange specialists aboard the Pioneer. First Officer Ramirez will show her to suitable quarters and arrange necessary security clearances. Lyra stepped forward and bowed slightly. Captain Rostova, I am honored to observe your mission and contribute to greater understanding between our species. Her voice had the same melodic quality as all Cathar, but Eva detected something unexpected, a slight hint of genuine interest. After the delegation departed, Dr. Thorne approached Eva in the corridor. Well, that was subtle as a supernova. They're testing our emotional responses again. I know, Eva replied quietly. Keep an eye on our guest. Limited access to ship systems, standard security protocols. But treat her with full diplomatic courtesy. You don't think she's just a spy? Asked Ramirez. Eva shook her head slightly. Oh, she's definitely here to gather intelligence. But there's something else going on. The Cathar don't waste resources on simple provocations. This cultural exchange has a deeper purpose. I'll run additional scans during her medical clearance, Dr. Thorne offered, though the Cathar physiology is notoriously difficult to read. Do what you can, Eva replied, watching as Lyra was escorted toward the guest quarters. Something tells me this Nebula mission just got a lot more complicated. The days that followed settled into an uneasy routine. Lyra was given restricted access to non-sensitive areas of the ship and began her observations. To Eva's surprise, the Cathar observer conducted herself with professionalism and showed genuine interest in the ship's operations. She requested permission to observe various departments: engineering, astrocartography, even the hydroponics bay, where the crew grew supplemental fresh produce. One evening, as Eva reviewed stellar cartography data in the observation lounge, she found Lyra standing at the viewport, silently watching the nebula's swirling gases. Specialist Lyra, Eva acknowledged. Finding your accommodations satisfactory? Lyra turned, her movements graceful and measured. Yes, Captain. Your crew has been most accommodating. I'm curious, Eva said, deciding on a more direct approach. What exactly does a junior cultural observation specialist do? It seems an unusual assignment for one of your people. Something flickered across Lyra's face. So brief, Eva almost missed it. I document behaviors, decision-making methodologies, and interaction patterns. The High Council values understanding of other species, even species you consider chaotically emotional and evolutionarily inferior. Eva couldn't resist asking. Instead of the typical Cathar dismissal, Lyra tilted her head slightly. Is understanding not valuable regardless of perceived evolutionary status? Your species has achieved impressive technological advancement despite, or perhaps because of, your emotional nature. Eva raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by this response. That's not the typical Cathar position. I am here to observe, not to recite established positions, Lyra replied. Her gaze returned to the nebula. This stellar phenomenon, It contains unusual radiation patterns and electromagnetic anomalies not documented in our databanks. We're scheduled to begin our deep exploration tomorrow, Eva said, studying Lyra's profile. The nebula's radiation makes long-range scanning unreliable. We'll need to chart it directly. An inefficient approach, Lyra commented. Sometimes the direct approach yields unexpected discoveries, Eva countered. Lyra turned to face her fully. May I observe the exploration process? It would be valuable data for my report. Eva considered her for a long moment. You may observe from the bridge, with the same restrictions already in place. Thank you, Captain. Lyra hesitated, then added, your stellar cartography methods differ significantly from Cthar approaches. There may be mutual benefit in comparative analysis. Eva couldn't hide her surprise. Are you offering Cthar navigational insights? I'm offering an observation that synthesis of methodologies often produces superior results than either approach in isolation, Lyra clarified. Logic suggests that different evolutionary paths may develop complementary strengths. It was the most un-Cthar-like statement Eva had ever heard from one of their kind. As Lyra departed the observation lounge, Eva found herself pondering this puzzle. Either this was an elaborate psychological assessment, or Specialist Lyra was not a typical Cthar. As the Pioneer ventured deeper into the Serpent's Eye Nebula over the following weeks, Eva found herself increasingly engaged in discussions with Lyra. What began as formal briefings evolved into complex dialogues about everything from stellar physics to philosophical questions about exploration ethics. Lyra demonstrated knowledge far beyond what would be expected of a junior specialist, revealing expertise in theoretical physics and stellar cartography that matched the Pioneer's best scientists. Your understanding of quantum filament formation is impressive, Eva noted one evening as they reviewed the day's mapping data in her ready room. That's advanced theoretical work, even by Terran standards. Lyra paused before answering. I had access to extensive educational programs. For a junior cultural observer, Eva pressed. My designation is a simplification for diplomatic purposes, Lyra admitted. My primary training is in theoretical physics with emphasis on spatial anomalies. Eva leaned back in her chair. So, the Cthar High Council sent a physicist to observe human cultural behaviors? That seems inefficient by your standards. A micro-expression, something almost like discomfort, crossed Lyra's face. The Council's decisions follow logical patterns that may not be immediately apparent. Or perhaps there's another agenda entirely, Eva suggested. Lyra met her gaze directly. All species have multiple objectives in their actions, Captain. Even humans, despite their emotional foundations, operate with layered purposes. Fair enough, Eva conceded. Then let's discuss these unusual energy readings we're detecting deeper in the nebula. Your theoretical background might offer insights our team hasn't considered. As they examined the data together, Eva couldn't help noticing how Lyra leaned forward with an intensity that seemed almost eager. It wasn't the calculated interest of a spy gathering intelligence, but the genuine engagement of a scientist encountering fascinating new phenomena. The deeper the Pioneer ventured into the nebula, the more unusual the environment became. Strange energy patterns disrupted sensors. Communication occasionally flickered, and crew members reported unusually vivid dreams. Dr. Thorne began monitoring for radiation effects, though his instruments detected nothing immediately harmful to human physiology. 3 weeks into the nebula exploration, the ship encountered a dense pocket of energy fluctuations that required careful navigation. Eva stood on the bridge, directing evasive maneuvers as the view screen displayed swirling, luminescent gases surrounding the ship. Shields holding at 87%, reported the tactical officer. These energy waves are increasing in intensity. Maintain course, Eva ordered. Sensor team, continue full spectral analysis. Lyra, who had been observing silently from her permitted station, suddenly stepped forward. Captain, these energy patterns match theoretical models of quantum resonance fields. If correct, A direct course will lead to increasing destabilization. Eva glanced at her science officer, who nodded reluctantly. She's right, Captain. These readings are consistent with that theory. Recommendation? Eva asked, addressing both of them. Lyra approached the navigation console. With permission, she entered a series of calculations, and a new trajectory appeared on the display. This path follows the natural resonance patterns rather than cutting across them. Theoretically safer, though slightly longer. Eva studied the proposed course, then nodded to her navigator. Implement Specialist Lyra's course correction. As the ship banked gently into the new trajectory, the turbulence immediately decreased. The shield indicators stabilized, then began to rise back toward normal levels. Well done, Eva acknowledged. Lyra inclined her head slightly. A logical application of theoretical principles. And good instincts, Eva added. That's not something I typically associate with Cthar methodology. Something that might have been pride flickered in Lyra's eyes before she composed her expression. Effective problem-solving transcends species differentiation. Later that night, as the Pioneer continued its smoother journey through the energy field, Eva found herself unable to sleep. The vivid dreams that had been affecting many crew members had begun visiting her as well. Strange visions of swirling energies and distant voices. She made her way to the observation deck, seeking the calming view of space. She was surprised to find Lyra already there, standing motionless before the viewport, watching the nebula's glowing gases flow past the ship. Trouble sleeping? Eva asked. Lyra turned, and in the dim lighting of the night cycle observation deck, her usually composed features seemed somehow more open. I have been experiencing unusual thought patterns during rest periods. Dreams, Eva suggested, moving to stand beside her at the viewport. Cthar do not dream, Lyra stated, but with less conviction than usual. The nebula is affecting many crew members' sleep patterns, Eva offered. Dr. Thorne believes it's related to the unusual radiation spectra we're encountering. Lyra was silent for a long moment. What are they like? She finally asked. Dreams. Eva considered the question. They're like experiencing a reality created by your own mind. Sometimes nonsensical, sometimes revealing, often processing experiences or emotions in symbolic ways. That sounds chaotic, Lyra observed. It can be, Eva agreed, but also insightful. Many human breakthroughs came from dream state realizations. Lyra turned to face her fully. I have been experiencing visual and emotional sequences during rest periods. Images of places I have never been, sensations I cannot categorize. It is disturbing. Eva was struck by the admission. Cthar never acknowledged vulnerability or confusion. The nebula must be affecting your neurological patterns. Perhaps, Lyra agreed. Or perhaps it is revealing something already present. She hesitated, then added more quietly. My assignment to this mission was not random, Captain. I suspected as much, Eva replied. I was selected because my psychological profiles showed irregularities, Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Tendencies toward what my people would consider emotional thinking, curiosity beyond functional necessity. I am an experiment. The admission hung in the air between them. Eva carefully considered her response. They sent you to observe us, but they're also observing you. Lyra nodded almost imperceptibly. The High Council believes exposure to human emotional processes might prove or disprove their theories about eliminating emotional response as an evolutionary advantage. And what do you believe? Eva asked. Lyra's gaze returned to the nebula. I am finding it increasingly difficult to maintain objective analysis in isolation from subjective experience. She turned suddenly, her silver eyes meeting Eva's with unexpected intensity. Your decision-making incorporates emotional responses, yet achieves results that pure logic might not predict. It is fascinating. The moment stretched between them, a connection forming that transcended their different species and ideologies. In that instant, Eva recognized something familiar in Lyra, the spirit of a true explorer, someone driven by curiosity and wonder, regardless of her species' cultural constraints. The ship's communication system suddenly activated. Bridge to Captain Rostova. Eva tapped her communicator. Rostova here. Captain, we're detecting a vessel following our course. It's using the nebula's radiation to mask its signature, but energy displacement patterns suggest Cthar design. Eva's eyes locked with Lyra's. Acknowledged. I'm on my way. She held Lyra's gaze a moment longer. It seems your former colleagues are keeping closer tabs than we realized. Lyra's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. This is not standard observation protocol. No, Eva agreed grimly. It's not. As the weeks passed, the Pioneer continued its careful exploration of a nebula, while maintaining awareness of their Cthar shadow. Eva ordered enhanced security protocols, but allowed Lyra to continue her scientific collaboration, a decision that raised eyebrows among some crew members but proved increasingly valuable as they navigated the nebula's strange phenomena. What Eva hadn't anticipated was how her relationship with Lyra would evolve. What began as cautious intellectual exchanges deepened into something more complex. They spent hours discussing the nature of consciousness, the value of emotion in decision-making, and the possibilities of understanding across species barriers. Eva found herself drawn to Lyra's brilliant mind and her struggle to reconcile her logical training with her emerging emotional awareness. For her part, Lyra seemed increasingly fascinated by human social dynamics, particularly the way the crew balanced individual needs with collective purpose. She began asking questions about music, art, and literature, concepts largely abandoned by Cthar society generations ago. During a particularly intense ion storm, when the Pioneer found itself trapped between volatile energy currents, Eva and Lyra worked side by side for 20 hours straight. Their complementary approaches, Eva's intuitive tactical thinking and Lyra's precise theoretical calculations, saved the ship from catastrophic shield failure. In the exhausted aftermath, they found themselves alone in the captain's ready room, sharing a rare moment of unguarded connection. That night marked a transformation in their relationship, a deeper understanding that eventually blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated or named, but both recognized as profound. The nebula's strange energies seemed to intensify everything, breaking down barriers between them that might otherwise have stood firm. Neither of them could have predicted the consequences. 2 months into the nebula exploration mission, Lyra requested a private meeting with Dr. Thorne. The ship's chief medical officer had been monitoring all crew members for effect from the nebula's radiation, but Lyra's symptoms seemed unique. Describe what you're experiencing, Dr. Thorne prompted as Lyra sat rigidly on the examination table in the medical bay. Periodic fatigue. Sensitivity to certain food compounds that previously caused no reaction. Unusual emotional responses to minor stimuli, Lyra listed clinically. And physical discomfort that migrates through my abdominal region. Dr. Thorne frowned, running his scanner over her for the 3rd time. Cthar physiology is notoriously difficult to assess with our equipment, but I'm detecting some unusual hormone levels compared to your baseline when you came aboard. I have also noted changes in sleep patterns and energy distribution, Lyra added. It may be an effect of the nebula's radiation, but... She hesitated, something most unusual for Cthar. But, Dr. Thorne prompted, the timing and pattern of symptoms do not match radiation exposure profiles, she concluded. Dr. Thorne studied his readings more carefully, then set down the scanner and looked directly at Lyra. I'd like to run a more comprehensive molecular scan. With your permission? Lyra nodded once. Proceed. 20 minutes later, Dr. Thorne stared at his results in disbelief. He ran the analysis 3 more times before finally looking up at Lyra, who watched him with uncharacteristic tension in her posture. This is, he began, then shook his head. According to every established scientific understanding of Cthar and human biology, this should be impossible. What have you found? Lyra asked, though something in her eyes suggested she already suspected. You're pregnant, Dr. Thorne stated flatly. And the embryonic DNA shows a stable hybrid genetic structure, part Cthar, part human. Lyra's perfect composure faltered for the first time since she'd come aboard. That is not possible. And yet, it appears to be the case, Dr. Thorne responded, turning the display so she could see the genetic analysis. The embryo is approximately 7 weeks in development, and despite the cross-species genetics, appears to be developing normally. In fact, the genetic integration is remarkably stable. Lyra stared at the display, her hand moving unconsciously to her abdomen. Ow! I have a theory, Dr. Thorne said carefully. The nebula's unique radiation patterns may have acted as a catalyst, activating dormant genetic adaptability in your reproductive system. We've documented the radiation's effects on neurochemistry among the crew, vivid dreams, heightened intuition, stronger emotional responses. It may be affecting genetic expression as well. This must remain confidential, Lyra said suddenly, her voice sharp with an emotion Dr. Thorne couldn't quite identify. Fear, perhaps, or protective instinct. Medical privacy is absolute, he assured her. But Captain Rostova should be informed of any significant medical development affecting crew or passengers. Of course, Lyra agreed after a moment. But no others. Dr. Thorne nodded slowly. I'll arrange a private meeting. Eva sat in stunned silence as Dr. Thorne finished explaining the situation. Lyra remained standing, her posture rigid, eyes fixed on some distant point. You're certain? Eva finally asked. I've verified the results multiple times, Dr. Thorne confirmed. The genetic melding should be impossible according to everything we know about Cthar and human biology. Yet it's happening, and the embryo appears viable. Eva turned to Lyra. And you had no knowledge this was possible? No, Lyra replied, her voice tight. Cthar reproductive biology is strictly controlled. All reproduction occurs through authorized genetic engineering protocols. Natural conception was eliminated from our species centuries ago as inefficient and unpredictable. She hesitated, then added, my presence here was partly an experiment to prove human emotional contamination could not affect Cthar biological imperatives. Well, Dr. Thorne said dryly, experiment successful, albeit with unexpected results. Eva shot him a warning look before addressing Lyra again. The Cthar vessel shadowing us. They don't know? No, Lyra said firmly. And they cannot be allowed to discover this. The High Council would. She stopped, and for the first time, Eva saw genuine fear in her eyes. They consider it contamination. Eva finished the thought. A threat to their genetic purity propaganda. Lyra nodded once. They would terminate the pregnancy immediately and likely subject me to extensive experimentation to determine how it occurred. Dr. Thorne cleared his throat. There's more. My analysis suggests this isn't a random mutation or simply the nebula's effect. The Cthar species appears to have had this compatibility potential all along. It's been deliberately suppressed, genetically locked away, so to speak. The nebula's energy simply reactivated what was already there. A genetic memory, Eva murmured, from before your species' genetic engineering programs. If that's true, Dr. Thorne continued, it means the Cthar leadership has been deliberately hiding or suppressing their species' true nature for centuries. A most significant political implication, Lyra acknowledged, her scientific detachment reasserting itself despite the circumstances. Eva stood and began pacing the office. The Cthar vessel has made no hostile moves yet, but if they discover this... She turned to face them both. I need time to think. For now, this information stays between the three of us. Doctor, continue monitoring Lyra's condition, but keep all records isolated from the main medical database. Of course, Captain, Dr. Thorne agreed. Eva turned to Lyra, her expression softening slightly. Are you? All right. Something remarkable happened then. Lyra smiled, a small but genuine expression. I find myself experiencing an unexpected emotional response that I believe humans would identify as wondered. The situation escalated 2 days later when the Pioneer security systems detected an attempted intrusion into the medical database. The ship's tactical officer traced the digital attack to the shadowing Cthar vessel. They're getting suspicious, First Officer Ramirez noted in the emergency senior staff meeting Eva had called. This is the third attempt to access our systems in the past week. They're looking for something specific, Eva concluded. Something about Lyra. Maybe they detected her medical anomalies through their own scans, suggested Engineer Lee. The Cthar have sensor technology that sometimes exceeds our own. Dr. Thorne shook his head. I've implemented multiple layers of security around all medical data pertaining to Lyra. Even if they manage to access our medical systems, those specific files are isolated. Eva made her decision. We need to cut this mission short and return to Terran space. Lyra's safety, and potentially much more, is at stake. The Cthar vessel will follow us, Ramirez pointed out. Then we'll need to lose them in the nebula, Eva replied. Jien, how are our engines holding up under the nebula's radiation? The chief engineer grimaced. Not great, Captain. We've seen a 12% efficiency reduction, and the plasma regulators are showing stress fractures. I would recommend pushing above Warp 5. That's still faster than the Cthar scout vessel, Eva noted. Plot a course that takes maximum advantage of the nebula's interference patterns. We need to break sensor contact long enough to change course without them tracking us. There's a particularly dense molecular cloud approximately 6 hours from our position, Lyra suggested, studying the stellar cartography display. The high concentrations of metrium particles would significantly disrupt their tracking sensors. Eva nodded. Make that our immediate destination. Inform the crew we're adjusting our mission parameters due to equipment concerns. As the senior staff dispersed to implement the new orders, Eva asked Lyra and Dr. Thorne to remain behind. Doctor, what's her condition? Eva asked once they were alone. Stable, he reported. Morning sickness is common in human pregnancies, and it appears to be affecting Lyra as well. But otherwise, both mother and embryo are remarkably healthy given the circumstances. And the genetic sequencing you mentioned? Eva pressed. Dr. Thorne activated a display showing complex genetic structures. I've identified the mechanism. The Cthar did indeed engineer their species to remove certain emotional capacities and the biological compatibility with other humanoid species. But they didn't actually delete these genetic sequences. They suppressed them with artificial gene blockers. Why not simply remove them entirely? Eva asked. Because they couldn't, Lyra interjected, her scientific training evident as she studied the display. These sequences must be fundamental to our biological functionality. Removing them entirely would have caused cascading genetic failures. Exactly, Dr. Thorne agreed. So instead, they created a genetic lock, an elegant piece of biological engineering. The nebula's unique radiation has somehow disrupted that lock, allowing Lyra's natural genetic heritage to express itself, including compatibility with human DNA, Eva concluded. An emotional capacity, Lyra added quietly. I have been experiencing considerable emotional responses that would be considered severe aberrations in Cthar society. Eva met her gaze. Are you certain you want to continue this pregnancy? We could. Yes, Lyra interrupted with unexpected firmness. This child represents a truth that has been hidden from my people for generations. It must survive. Eva nodded slowly. Then we'll do everything in our power to ensure that happens. The Pioneer altered course toward the molecular cloud, maintaining maximum sustainable speed. For several hours, it seemed their plan might succeed without confrontation. Then the tactical officer reported with alarm. Captain, the Cthar vessel has increased speed and is closing rapidly. They're charging weapons. Red alert, Eva ordered. Shields to maximum. Evasive pattern Delta. The Pioneer shuddered as the first Cthar energy blast struck their shields. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. On screen, Eva commanded, rising from her chair. Ambassador Telsik's face appeared on the view screen, his expression a cold mask of Cthar control. Captain Rostova, you will immediately halt your vessel and prepare to transfer the Cthar observer Lyra to our custody. She has been contaminated by nebula radiation and requires immediate medical intervention. Eva's expression remained neutral. Ambassador, we've detected no dangerous contamination. Specialist Lyra is in good health according to our medical scans. Your scanning technology is insufficient to detect Kthar physiological aberrations. Telsic responded dismissively. This is not a request. Return our citizen immediately. Specialist Lyra is aboard my vessel under diplomatic arrangement, Eva countered. Any change to that arrangement requires her consent. Telsic's eyes narrowed fractionally. She is Kthar. Her individual preferences are irrelevant to the collective need. Your human concept of consent does not apply. Actually, Lyra's voice came from behind Eva as she stepped in a view of the communication system. Terran diplomatic protocols recognize my right to asylum if requested. Telsic's composure visibly faltered. Lyra, you are experiencing neurological impairment from radiation exposure. Your judgment is compromised. My judgment is clearer than it has ever been, Lyra replied calmly. I have discovered the systematic deception perpetrated by the High Council regarding our species' true biological nature. This is sedition. Telsic hissed, his legendary Kthar control cracking further. You will return for immediate neurological correction. I think not, Lyra responded. Eva stepped forward. Ambassador, any further hostile action against this vessel will be considered an act of war against the Terran Alliance. I suggest you reconsider. Telsic's face hardened. This is not over, Captain Rostova. The Kthar do not forget betrayal. The communication cut abruptly. They're powering weapons again, the tactical officer reported. Evasive maneuvers, Eva ordered. Get us into that molecular cloud. Engineerly, we need everything you can give the engines. The Pioneer surged forward, shuddering as occasional energy blasts from the pursuing Kthar vessel glanced off its shields. Chief Engineer Lee worked frantically to maintain engine stability as they pushed the propulsion systems beyond recommended limits. Approaching the cloud perimeter, the navigator announced. Full sensor recording, Eva commanded. I want detailed scans of our entry vector for when we need to find our way out again. The view screen showed the dense, swirling particles of the molecular cloud engulfing the ship. Visibility dropped to near zero, and sensor efficiency plummeted just as they predicted. The Kthar vessel is still in pursuit, the tactical officer reported. But their targeting systems appear compromised. Energy discharges are becoming random. Now's our chance, Eva said. Alter course, 180 degrees vertical pitch, then 30 degrees to starboard. Let's use the cloud's density to mask our signature. The Pioneer executed the sharp maneuver, diving downward relative to their previous course, then angling off in a new direction. The ship groaned under the stress, but held together. Kthar vessel continuing on original vector. The tactical officer confirmed after several tense minutes. They've lost us. Eva didn't relax. Maintain current course and speed. Let's put as much distance between us as possible before exiting the cloud. For 3 hours, the Pioneer navigated the treacherous molecular cloud, making random course adjustments to further confuse any pursuit. When they finally emerged into clearer space, there was no sign of the Kthar vessel on sensors. Set course for Terran Outpost Gamma 9, Eva ordered. It's the closest secure installation. Captain, Engineer Lee interrupted. The warp drive is showing critical stress fractures in the dilithium chamber. We need to reduce speed. Eva frowned. How long to reach Gamma 9 at safe speed? Approximately 3 weeks, Lee replied grimly. That's too long, Dr. Thorne said quietly, having joined them on the bridge during the crisis. The Kthar will have alerted their fleet by now. They'll establish a perimeter around likely exit vectors from the nebula. Eva turned to Lyra. Your assessment? Lyra considered the stellar map thoughtfully. There is an alternative. The Thanatos Belt, an asteroid field approximately 4 days from our position at safe warp speed. Its dense mineral composition disrupts long-range sensors and communication. We could potentially traverse it and emerge closer to Terran space without detection. The Thanatos Belt is notoriously hazardous to navigation, First Officer Ramirez objected. Yes, Lyra agreed, but I have studied it extensively. With your permission, Captain, I believe I can plot a safe course through it. The asteroid field's unique mineral composition would provide essential shielding from Cathar long-range detection. Eva studied the stellar charts, weighing their limited options. Begin plotting the course, Specialist Lyra. Engineer Lee, focus all repair teams on reinforcing our navigational shields and structural integrity fields. Dr. Thorne, prepare medical for potential casualties if we encounter difficulties. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Lyra remained on the bridge with Eva. When they were relatively alone, Eva spoke quietly. Are you certain about this course? The risk isn't just to the ship now. Lyra placed a hand unconsciously on her abdomen. The risk of capture by the Cathar is greater. They would. She hesitated, emotions flickering across her face in a way that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. They would terminate this life without hesitation and erase all evidence it ever existed. I won't let that happen, Eva promised, her voice firm with conviction. Lyra met her gaze directly. I believe you, Captain. That belief is not logical, yet I find it comforting nonetheless. The journey to the Thanatos belt was tense but uneventful. True to Engineer Lee's warnings, the warp engines required constant attention to maintain even reduced speed. The crew worked in shifts around the clock, and Eva ordered all non-essential systems shut down to divert power to propulsion and shields. As they approached the vast asteroid field, the view screen displayed an intimidating barrier of tumbling space, rock ranging from small fragments to planetoids several kilometers across. Jagged, mineral-rich asteroids collided with each other in unpredictable patterns, creating debris clouds that could shred a starship's hull in seconds. Shields at maximum, Eva ordered as they took position at the field's perimeter. Navigational sensors at highest resolution. Lyra worked alongside the navigation team, her fingers moving with precision across the specialized console Eva had authorized for her use. I've identified a potential passage through the first sector, she reported. The larger asteroids create a relatively stable corridor, though smaller debris will require active navigation. Proceed at 1/4 impulse, Eva commanded. Tactical, maintain continuous proximity scans for any signs of pursuit. The Pioneer edged forward into the asteroid field, its powerful shields deflecting smaller rocks while the navigation team guided the ship around larger obstacles. Lyra remained focused on her calculations, occasionally providing course corrections that seemed to anticipate the asteroid movements before the ship's sensors registered them. How are you predicting these trajectories so accurately? Eva asked after a particularly impressive navigation sequence through a dense cluster. Our mathematical training includes predictive chaos theory, Lyra explained without looking up from her console. The asteroid movements appear random but follow complex gravitational interactions that can be modeled with sufficient variables. They progressed steadily through the treacherous field for nearly 14 hours when the tactical officer suddenly reported, "Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with Cathar weapons fire. Extreme range, bearing 310 Mark 42. On screen, Eva ordered, tension returning to her voice. The view screen zoomed to maximum magnification, showing distant flashes of energy at the edge of the asteroid field they'd entered. Hours earlier, 2 vessels, the tactical officer confirmed. One Cathar, one appears to be a Terran merchant ship. Eva's jaw tightened. They're hunting any human vessel that might offer us asylum. The merchant ship is taking heavy damage, reported the tactical officer. Their distress beacon has activated. Eva faced the impossible choice that every captain dreaded: continue their escape or risk everything to save innocent lives. Before she could speak, Lyra looked up from her console. We cannot reach them in time, she said quietly. The probability of successful intervention without catastrophic damage to Pioneer is less than 7%. And if we were disabled or destroyed, she didn't need to finish the thought. If the Pioneer fell, the secret Lyra carried would die with them, a truth that could change the relationship between their species forever. Send an encrypted burst transmission to Terran Command, Eva ordered, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Include coordinates and identification of attacking vessel. Note that we are unable to render assistance due to critical mission parameters. The bridge fell silent, the weight of the lives they couldn't save hanging heavily in the air. The Kthar vessel has disabled the merchant ship, the tactical officer reported eventually. They appear to be conducting a detailed scan, likely looking for us. Now, they're leaving the disabled vessel. Continue on our course, Eva said grimly. Maximum stealth protocols. And pray they don't find anyone else looking for us. For 3 more days, the Pioneer carefully navigated the asteroid field. Twice they detected distant Kthar energy signatures, but each time managed to use the dense mineral deposits to mask their presence. The strain began showing on everyone. Engineer Lee and his teams struggled to maintain the overtaxed shields. The navigation team worked exhausting shifts plotting safe passages, and the entire crew felt the weight of constant danger. Dr. Thorne monitored Lyra's condition daily, reporting to Eva in private. The pregnancy is progressing normally, all things considered, he informed her during one such meeting. But I'm concerned about stress levels. Even Kthar physiology has limits. We should reach the far side of the asteroid field within 18 hours, Eva replied. Then it's a straight run to Gamma 9 outpost. And then what? Dr. Thorne asked. The Kthar won't simply accept this situation. We're potentially igniting an interspecies incident. One the Kthar started when they sent Lyra as their little diplomatic joke, Eva countered. I suspect the political fallout is exactly what they've been trying to prevent with this pursuit. They don't want anyone knowing their carefully engineered genetic superiority is a lie. As predicted, the Pioneer emerged from the Thanatos belt the following day, shields weakened but intact. Eva ordered immediate course for Terran Outpost Gamma 9 at the highest sustainable warp speed the damaged engines could maintain. Captain, the communications officer called urgently. I'm receiving a priority transmission from Terran Command, Admiral Chun Lei. Eva nodded. In my ready room. The stern face of Admiral Chun appeared on her private screen moments later. Captain Rostova, your encrypted transmission raised several red flags. Multiple Kthar vessels have violated border agreements in what they're calling pursuit of a contaminated citizen. Would you care to explain what's happening before this escalates further? Eva took a deep breath and laid out the situation in precise detail. The Kthar gift of Lyra, the nebula's effects, the unprecedented pregnancy, and the scientific evidence that the Kthar had been systematically lying about their species' biology for generations. The Admiral listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. When Eva finished, he was silent for several long moments. Your evidence is conclusive? He finally asked. Dr. Thorne has verified it repeatedly, Eva confirmed. And Specialist Lyra herself has confirmed the deception perpetrated by Kthar leadership. This isn't just about one pregnancy, Admiral. It's about fundamental truths that could reshape our understanding of the Kthar and our relationship with them. Admiral Chin nodded slowly. I'm dispatching a cruiser squadron to escort you to Gamma 9. ETA 16 hours. Until then, you're on your own. Maximum stealth protocols. Chin out. The transmission ended, leaving Eva alone with the weight of responsibility. She had effectively committed the Terran Alliance to protecting Lyra and her unborn child, a decision with ramifications far beyond her rank should technically allow. She returned to the bridge to find the tactical officer reporting with alarm. Captain, sensors detect 2 Kthar vessels on intercept course. Time to contact approximately 40 minutes. Red alert, Eva ordered. Battle. Stations. Our weapons and shields are severely compromised from the asteroid field transit, First Officer Ramirez warned. We cannot survive a direct confrontation. Eva's mind raced through tactical options. What about the Manari Nebula? She asked, pointing to a small gas cloud on their stellar charts. It's directly ahead. Class 3 Plasma Nebula, the science officer confirmed. Highly volatile. Vessels typically avoid it due to the risk of igniting plasma storms. Which makes it perfect, Eva concluded. Alter course directly into the nebula. Tactical, prepare to release a modified probe behind us. Rig it to emit the exact frequency that would trigger a plasma ignition. Understanding dawned on Ramirez's face. We enter the nebula, leave the probe, and when the Kthar follow. They trigger a plasma storm that hopefully disables them and covers our escape. Eva finished. Engineer Lee, I need that probe reconfigured immediately. The crew worked with practiced efficiency to implement Eva's plan. As the nebula's swirling gases filled the view screen, Engineer Lee reported the probe was ready. Deploy on my mark, Eva ordered as they entered the nebula's outer boundary. The ship shuddered slightly as the volatile plasma surrounded them. Cut speed to 1/4 impulse, minimal power signatures. The Pioneer crept forward into the dense gas cloud, its sensors nearly blind in the interference. After traveling 5 kilometers into the nebula, Eva gave the command. Deploy probe. Then full impulse on exit trajectory. The small probe detached from the ship, programmed to activate only when the Cathar vessels came within range. The Pioneer surged forward along its plotted escape path. Cathar vessels entering the nebula. Tactical reported. 20 kilometers and closing fast. Steady, Eva cautioned. We need them deeper in before. A massive explosion lit up the view screen as the nebula behind them erupted into a cascading plasma storm. The Pioneer rocked violently from a shockwave. Status of Cathar vessels? Eva demanded once the initial turbulence subsided. Difficult to determine through the interference, Tactical responded. But the plasma storm appears to have enveloped their position. I'm reading power fluctuations consistent with ships experiencing severe system overloads. Get us out of here before the storm expands further, Eva ordered. The Pioneer limped clear of the nebula, its already damaged systems further strained by the plasma storm's effects. Behind them, the once calm gas cloud had transformed into a chaotic maelstrom of energy discharges that would trap the Cathar vessels for hours, if not disable them entirely. Set course for rendezvous with the Terran squadron, Eva commanded, allowing herself the first moment of hope in days. 16 hours later, the welcome sight of 3 Terran cruisers appeared on their sensors. Under their protection, the Pioneer completed its journey to Outpost Gamma 9 without further incident. As they docked at the secure facility, Eva felt the enormous tension of the past weeks beginning to ease, though she knew the real challenges were only beginning. Admiral Chun was waiting when Eva, Dr. Thorne, and Lyra disembarked. His expression was unreadable as he led them directly to a secure conference room where several other high-ranking officials waited, including a civilian woman introduced as Director Laurel Hayes of Terran Intelligence. We've reviewed the data you transmitted, Admiral Chun began without preamble. If verified, the implications are significant. I have brought additional evidence, Lyra stated calmly, placing a data crystal on the table. This contains historical Cathar biological records I accessed before leaving my homeworld. They confirm Dr. Thorne's findings regarding the artificial suppression of genetic compatibility and emotional capacity in my species. Director Hayes leaned forward. Why would you bring such information? You must have known it would be considered treasonous by your government. I have long harbored doubts about certain aspects of Cathar doctrine, Lyra admitted. The mission to observe humans was an opportunity to test those doubts. I did not anticipate how dramatically events would unfold. Let me be direct, Admiral Chun interjected. The Cathar High Council has formally demanded your return, claiming you've been contaminated by radiation that has affected your judgment. They've threatened serious diplomatic consequences if we refuse. And if I choose to request asylum? Lyra asked. Then we have a first-class diplomatic crisis, Director Hayes responded. One that could potentially lead to armed conflict. Eva stepped forward. With respect, we already have a diplomatic crisis. The Cathar attacked a Terran science vessel, pursued us through neutral space, and even fired upon a civilian merchant ship. Their actions have violated at least 6 provisions of the Galactic Accord. Because they're desperate to hide the truth, Dr. Thorne added. This pregnancy represents more than one unusual biological event. It exposes centuries of deliberate genetic manipulation and suppression by the Cathar leadership. A truth that might destabilize their entire society, Director Hayes noted thoughtfully. Lyra placed a protective hand on her abdomen. This child represents what my species once was, and could be again. Beings capable of both logical thought and emotional connection, genetically diverse rather than artificially constrained. The High Council fears this truth because it undermines their control. Admiral Chen studied her with calculating eyes. You understand, we'll need to verify everything independently. Our own scientists will want to examine you, confirm Dr. Thorne's findings. I consent to reasonable examination, Lyra agreed. But I will not submit to any procedure that threatens this pregnancy. We should convene a formal diplomatic summit, Eva suggested. Force the Cthar to address these issues openly, with neutral witnesses from other allied species. Risky, Director Hayes cautioned, but potentially effective. The Cthar value their reputation for logical honesty. If we can demonstrate they've been systematically deceiving not just us but their own people, I'm granting provisional asylum, Admiral Chen decided. Captain Rostova, your crew will remain at Gamma 9 until further notice. Director Hayes, arrange for our top xenobiologists to confirm these findings and prepare diplomatic channels for what might become a very uncomfortable conversation with the Cthar High Council. 2 weeks later, Eva stood beside Lyra in a large, formal chamber aboard the Terran diplomatic vessel Concord. Representatives from 7 major spacefaring species sat in a semicircle facing them, with the Cthar delegation directly opposite. Ambassador Telsic's face remained impassive, but the tension in his posture was obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. Admiral Chen opened the proceedings. This emergency session has been convened at the request of the Terran Alliance to address serious allegations regarding Cthar biological manipulation and the status of the Cthar citizen known as Lyra, who has requested asylum in Terran territory. These proceedings are unnecessary. Ambassador Telsic responded smoothly. The individual in question has been affected by nebula radiation, causing neurological damage and delusional thinking. We simply request the return of our citizen for proper medical treatment. Interesting, commented the Andorian representative, her antennae twitching with skepticism. Yet the Terrans claim to have scientific evidence contradicting this explanation. We do, Dr. Thorne confirmed, stepping forward to activate a large holographic display. With specialist Lyra's consent, we have conducted extensive analysis of her condition. The results are unequivocal. The display showed detailed genetic sequences and comparative analyses. Dr. Thorne methodically explained the findings, how the nebula's radiation had deactivated artificial genetic blockers in Lyra's DNA, allowing dormant genetic potential to express itself, how this had enabled both emotional processing and, most significantly, reproductive compatibility with human genetics. Most compelling, he concluded, is the pregnancy itself. Verified independently by 3 separate xenobiology teams, it confirms that Cthar and human DNA can successfully combine, something the Cthar have long claimed was biologically impossible. Ambassador Telsic's composure wavered slightly. These findings are preliminary and based on a single anomalous case that they are consistent with historical Cthar biological data, Lyra interrupted, stepping forward. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Cthar never interrupted one another, considering it the height of a logical behavior. Lyra activated her own data crystal, displaying ancient Cthar biological records. These archives, accessed from our historical database, confirm that our ancestors possessed full emotional capacity and greater genetic adaptability. Approximately 12 centuries ago, the ruling scientific council began a systematic program to perfect our species by suppressing these traits, defining them as evolutionary weaknesses. The evidence was methodically presented over several hours, with experts from multiple species offering analysis and commentary. Throughout, the Cthar delegation grew increasingly rigid, occasionally conferring in whispered tones. Finally, Lyra addressed the gathering directly, her hand resting on her now visible pregnancy. I do not seek to harm the Cthar people. I am Cthar, but I believe our society has been built upon a fundamental deception. The notion that logic and emotion must be mutually exclusive, That genetic diversity is weakness rather than strength. This child represents what we once were and what we might become again, a species capable of both logical excellence and emotional understanding. Ambassador Telsic rose abruptly. This session must be adjourned while the High Council evaluates these claims. The facts are not subject to evaluation, countered the Vulcan representative, whose own species had chosen to control rather than eliminate their emotions. They simply are. The evidence suggests a deliberate program of biological suppression and historical revision. The diplomatic summit continued for 3 more days, with increasing pressure on the Cathar delegation. Eventually, faced with irrefutable evidence and growing skepticism from the other species, Ambassador Telsic made a stunning announcement. The High Council acknowledges that certain historical biological facts may have been recontextualized for the greater stability of our society, he stated carefully. However, this does not change the potential danger of uncontrolled genetic expression. We maintain that Lyra requires treatment. I believe that is her choice to make, Eva interjected, speaking publicly for the first time during the proceedings. The Andorian representative nodded in agreement. The Interstellar Rights Accord is clear. Sentient beings have autonomy over their own bodies. If Specialist Lyra chooses to maintain her current biological state and seek asylum, that is her right. In the end, a compromise was reached. The Cathar reluctantly recognized Lyra's right to asylum and the legitimacy of her pregnancy, while the Terran Alliance agreed to limit public disclosure of the specific genetic evidence to prevent destabilization of Cathar society. A joint scientific commission would be established to study the implications of the reactivated genetic potential, with any findings to be gradually implemented rather than forced immediately upon the Cathar population. As the diplomatic parties filed out of the chamber, Ambassador Telsic approached Eva and Lyra privately. "You understand this changes everything," he said quietly. "The joke, as humans would say, has backfired rather spectacularly." "It was never a joke," Lyra responded. "It was an experiment based on fear. Fear that your careful genetic engineering might not be as perfect as you claimed." Telsic regarded her with new eyes. "Perhaps. But remember this, both of you, societies do not change overnight. There will be those among my people who view this as contamination rather than revelation. Your child will be both symbol and target." "We're aware of the risks," Eva replied, instinctively moving closer to Lyra. "I suspect you are," Telsic acknowledged with a slight inclination of his head. "Nevertheless, I find myself curious about the outcome." With that uncharacteristically emotional admission, he turned and rejoined his delegation. 3 years later, Eva stood at the viewport of the Pioneer, watching a small figure with silvery hair and deep blue eyes examining a holographic display of the ship's navigation system. The child, named Serena, displayed both her mother's analytical precision and her other parents' intuitive grasp of spatial relationships. At 3 years old, she was already bilingual and showing cognitive development that impressed specialists from both species. Lyra joined Eva at the viewport, her face now comfortably expressive in a way that would have been unthinkable before the Nebula mission. As a cultural attaché to the Joint Cathar-Terran Scientific Commission, she maintained her connection to her people while embracing her new biological reality. "The first group of volunteer Cathar has completed the genetic reactivation procedure," Lyra informed Eva. "Early results are consistent with my experience. Gradual increase in emotional processing without loss of logical capability." "And the opposition?" Eva asked. "Still significant," Lyra acknowledged. "Change comes slowly, especially to a society built on the belief in its own perfection. But each success strengthens our position." They watched as Serena manipulated the holographic stars, creating her own imaginary constellations with both mathematical precision and creative whimsy. "She represents what's possible," Eva said softly. "Not just for Cathar and humans, but for all of us. The integration of logic and emotion, the strength that comes from diversity rather than uniformity." Lyra's hand found Eva's, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in her previous life. An unexpected outcome from what began as a diplomatic insult. The best joke, Eva replied with a smile, is the one no one sees coming. As the Pioneer continued its mission of exploration, now serving as both a scientific vessel and a symbol of unprecedented cooperation, Serena looked up from her stars and waved excitedly at her parents. In her unique face, neither fully human nor fully Cthar, was the future none of them could have imagined, a bridge between worlds that began as a jest and became a revolution.